What is good, everybody? It is that best time of the season, the best time of the season. It is approaching rookie draft season. NFL Combine just behind us, NFL Draft coming up in about a month and a half. Then we're going to go full force into our rookie drafts. Before we do that, before we get our hopes up on this batch of rookies, which we do, it's fun. I wanted to take a look at last year's rookie class, specifically the wide receivers. Specifically, I wanted to look at what did they score points per game, because we always do points per game, not overall, because that's just weird. So points per game, what did the rookie wide receivers do? And more importantly than that, based off what they've done, can I go back, take a little sample of that scoring, those scoring ranges, and see what wide receivers in their rookie season in the past have scored in that range and how they performed going forward. For example, Marvin Harrison Jr. last year scored 11.6 fantasy points. Xavier Worthy hit 11. Jalen McMillan was at 10.4 using playerprofiler.com. Helps if I get their name right. Not that confusing, really. Anyway, so Marvin Harrison Jr., 11.6, Xavier Worthy, 11, Jalen McMillan, 10.4. So they're roughly in the same range. So what I did is I took 5 years from 2018 to 2022 on StatHead. I looked at wide receivers that scored in that range in their rookie season just to see what they did going forward, just to give me a baseline. This isn't the end-all, be-all, but I think it's instructive and it's informative to look at what's happened in the past when players have produced similarly to players today and what those players did to give us an idea of what these players might do. So again, I'm looking at the 2024 class wide receivers. Used 5 years of data from StatHead, 2018 to 2022. Two reasons I used 5 years of data. One, 5 is a nice round number, kind of arbitrary, but whatever. It's 5 years of data. It felt like it gave me a nice data set. The reason I went to 2022 is I wanted to give the rookie wide receivers from 2022 3 seasons to produce a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, a wide receiver 3 season, right? So 22, 23, 24. Third year breakout. Now, I know it's only 2 years after their rookie season, but still, back in the day, I don't know if any of you are old like me, we used to talk about the third year breakout for wide receivers. That was kind of like the last gasp, for lack of a better term. That's when we said a lot of wide receivers would break out in that third year. So the third year for the 2022 rookie wide receivers would have been 2024. One more point of emphasis. I'm only looking at what these rookies did after their rookie seasons, right? So, for example, Jamar Chase. Obviously, he was a wide receiver 1 in his rookie year, but I'm looking at the data after that to instruct what he did going forward. You'll see what I mean as we go through this. I think that is it. Yep, I looked at every season after the rookie season since I only wanted to see how they produced after the rookie season scoring threshold. Obviously, I used our rookie seasons to put them in buckets. Okay, so let's just start from the top. Very bad scoring. It's a technical term. Look it up. Players that scored 2.0 to 6.0 fantasy points last year in their rookie year. I had Jalen Polk, Jordan Whittington, A.D. Mitchell, Malik Washington, and Troy Franklin. So again, going from 28 to 2022. I looked at players that scored in that same range from 2.0 to 6.0. There were 72 players in that range. 72. Of those 72 players, only 6 wide receivers went on to give you a top 36 season. Just 6 out of 72. That is less than 10%. That is actually 8.3%. One player out of that sample size, which is 1.4%, very small number, went on to give you a wide receiver 1 season. That was Nico Collins. So Nico Collins is definitely an outlier. 3 receivers went ahead and gave you a wide receiver 2 season, and then 3 receivers went on to produce wide receiver 3 seasons. Now, I should probably note before I go any further, I just want to explain, some of these wide receivers might have given you wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3, or wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 seasons, or just one of each. For example, Jacoby Myers, he put up 2 wide receiver 2 seasons and 2 wide receiver 3 seasons in the 4 seasons since his rookie season. He's done that. He's giving you 2 wide receiver 2s and 2 wide receiver 3 seasons. And he's actually in this data set here, this 2.0 to 6.0 data range. I do know that people had an issue when I did this last time. They said, Shane, cool, this is great. But the problem is you're not measuring all these players the same, right? There's players that were drafted in the 5th round, 6th round, 7th round. You're taking those into account, which might skew the data set. Good point. So let me go with the 1st and 2nd round wide receivers that fell into this range. Okay, so of those 72 players, 12 of them were drafted in the 1st or 2nd round. 11 in the 2nd round, just 1 in the 1st, N'Keal Harry. Oh, N'Keal. Okay, so out of that 12 players, just two players drafted in the first 2 rounds that scored 2.0 to 6.0 fantasy points per game in their rookie season went on to give you a top 36 season. One of those players, Jameson Williams. I've already taken the L on that, guys. Yes, Jameson Williams is an outlier. Took the L. DJ Chark is the other. N'Keal Harry. What a sad story. I think N'Keal Harry is a tight end now. I could be making that up, but I feel like every big-bodied tight end that busts out turns into a tight end, like JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Jordan Matthews, although he didn't bust out. Jordan Matthews was a very good wide receiver for a couple of years, turned into a tight end. Neither here nor there. Don't let me get distracted by myself. My apologies. 2 out of 12 wide receivers drafted in the first 2 rounds in that scoring range, 2.0 to 6 points per game, went on to give you a top 36 season. That is 16%. That's not good. I mean, I'm not a mathematician. I don't pretend to be. I am going to actually share something with you. I'm going to share the rookies that fell in that range, just so you don't think I'm making it up. Let's share the screen here. Let's see. That is definitely the wrong screen. So let's try and stop that. So let me just list the names off for you, because I don't want to share the wrong screen. The players that fell in this range were N'Keal Harry, Paris Campbell, Tyquan Thornton, James Washington, Van Jefferson, Sky Moore, Terrace Marshall, JMO, Andy Isabella, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and who did I miss? Dwayne Eskridge, Van Jefferson. Not a good set. So let's move on. All right. Enough's been said about players in that range, 2.0 to 6 points per game. The important thing to take away from that is that only 6 wide receivers went on to give you a top 36 season, and even accounting for 1st and 2nd round draft capital, their hit rate still sucked. It sucked ass. So the next range, 6.1 to 9.79 fantasy points per game. And as an aside, I do go up a point and down a point. This range is where I start going, right? To get a wider range, and just so I don't miss out on any wide receivers that might have just fallen right below that threshold. For example, like a player could have scored, I don't know, 6.1, and I didn't get them in this range because, I was looking at the 7.8 that Xavier Legette scored as a rookie. So let me just add in 6.1 just to get a little wider range. Probably a good idea just to expand the sample size. So anyway, 6.1 to 9.79 fantasy points per game. So last year in that range, it was Xavier Legette, Devon Vele, Jalen Coker, Ricky Purcell, Rome Odunze, and Keon Coleman. A couple of those dudes I really liked. Rome Odunze specifically, Keon Coleman I liked, Ricky Purcell, never really a guy. I did like Xavier Legette too. So going back again, 5 years, 2018 to 2022, there were 30 wide receivers that fell in that range as rookies. 30 wide receivers that fell into that range as rookies. Of that number, only 7 gave you at least one top 36 season. gave you 0. That's 0 in case you're not watching and you're just listening. That's the sound for 0. 0 gave you a wide receiver 1 season. 4 of them. 4 gave you wide receiver 2 seasons, and 5 gave you wide receiver 3 seasons. So there is some usability. Sure. I think that's the word I'll use. There is some fantasy viability in that range, but not a lot. Still not a lot. And before you start putting in my comments, yes, JSN. Well, JSN isn't in this data set. He'd be in the next one I do next year. If I'm still around, God willing, or still on DD, Ray willing. JSN would have fell in the scoring range when he was a rookie. And then, yes, he went out and put up a wide receiver 2 season last year. I believe it was wide receiver 14 overall. Took the L on that. Yes. But also that's kind of why I decided to incorporate draft capital. So what I did is out of those 30 players that fell in the scoring range of 6.1 to 9.79 over 2018 to 2022 in their rookie year, 16 of those players were drafted in the first 2 rounds. Of that, 1, 2, 3. 3 of them gave you a top 36 season. That's not a lot. And maybe, hopefully, let's see if I can share my screen now. Let's see if I can figure it out to see which screen it is, because I would like to share the names with you without me just reading through them all. Let's try this. Hey, I got it right. Cool. So players that fell in this range as rookies. There was George Pickens, Rashid Bateman, Dante Pettis, Wan'Dale Robinson, Treylon Burks, Court Sutton, Kadarius Toney, Anthony Miller, Jalen Reagor, Rondale Moore, Michael Pittman Jr., McCole Hardman, Alec Pierce, KJ Hamler, Denzel Mims, and Henry Ruggs. Obviously, Henry Ruggs had some other issues there that precluded him from putting up fantasy seasons. But again, out of those 16 players drafted in the first 2 rounds, only 3 of them went on to give you top 36 seasons. Only 3 of them. That's, again, not a very good hit rate. It's 19%. I didn't even bother to go break it down by how many gave you a wide receiver 1, 2, 3 seasons, whatever. 3 of them, 19% went on to give you a top 36 season. That's not great, Bob. Stop sharing my screen. We're going to close that screen out. That way I don't open it again by accident. That would be awesome. Okay, so let's get to the next range. And this is where we start getting into some hits. Not surprisingly. So the next range, the third range, I'll call it. The players in this range where it's 9.8 fantasy points per game through 12.6 fantasy points per game. We had Xavier Worthy, Marvin Harrison, and Jalen McMillan. So again, going back to 28 to 22, I looked at players in their rookie season, wide receivers that scored in that range, came up with 17. Obviously, the sample size also starts getting a little smaller here. 17 players fell in that range. Out of that, 10 of those wide receivers went on to put up top 36 seasons. That's 59% of them. Not bad at all, right? Not bad at all. That means if you are a rookie and you put up 9.8 to 12.6 fantasy points, you're probably going to give me a wide receiver 3 season in the future, at least. So 5 of those had wide receiver 3 seasons, 9 hit wide receiver 2 seasons, and 4 hit wide receiver 1 seasons. And just to reiterate, because I might have skipped over it, maybe you're not misunderstanding the math. Again, some of these players put up multiple seasons, right? Some of these players in this range that scored as a rookie, like DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, DJ Moore. Those types of players put up wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2 seasons, right? So they hit both thresholds. So again, going back to the draft capital, let's just filter out all the garbage players and let's just use wide receivers drafted in the first and second round. There's 12 of them. There were 12 of them. 8 of those 12, 67%, give you a top 36 season. Really good, right? So what's that tell us? If a wide receiver is drafted in the first or second round and they score in this range, 9.8 to 12.6, probably going to go on to be very fantasy viable. In fact, 5 gave you wide receiver 3 seasons. 7 gave you wide receiver 2 seasons. That's a predominant one out of this range for some reason. And then 3 gave you wide receiver 1 seasons. Not bad. But can't really hold a candle to the next batch. The next batch is the just insane scoring tier, right? We have Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, and Malik Nabers. Not in that order. It's actually Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., and then Malik Nabers, lowest to highest. Ladd McConkey gave you 15.1 last year. BTJ gave you 16.7, and Malik Nabers 18.2. They are good. Anywho, so not surprisingly, the results are going to look a little different here, right? So there were 13 players that fell in this range. 13 players that fell in this range. 13 other players in those 5 years from 28 to 22 that scored between 12.6 and 18.2 points per game. Again, very, very high range. These players are very, very good. So what did they do going forward? Well, not surprisingly, every one of these players, 13 out of 13, which is 100%. If you know that, you know that now. 13 of those players, there's been 13. Each one of them gave you at least a top 36 season. 5 gave you wide receiver 3 seasons. There were 9 wide receiver 2 seasons, and there were 8 wide receiver 1 seasons. 8 out of 13 have given you wide receiver 1 seasons. That's incredible. And just real quick, if you wanted to go to the draft capital, because draft capital is important, it's not something that you should ignore. And I don't want to say ignored it in the past, but I certainly didn't include it. Anyway, if you want to go to the draft capital and look at the players that were drafted in the first 2 rounds, that gives us a sample size of 11. And that gives you Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Chase Claypool, Chris Olave, Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson, and Deebo Samuel. Okay, so those are the players that were in that range from 2018 to 2022. Those are the players that were drafted in the first or the second round. Excuse me, first or second round. So 11 of those 13 players were drafted in the first or the second round. 7 of those 11. 64% of those players have given you a wide receiver 1 season, or at least 64% of the time. There's been 64. There's been 7 wide receiver 1 seasons individually. Obviously, a couple people have multiple ones, like Chase has, every season. Justin Jefferson has, every season. AJ Brown has several wide receiver 1 seasons. And then another 8 gave you wide receiver 2 seasons. I don't know what else to say. Obviously, that is just an insane class, an insane class. Just to break down this tier a little bit more, just to be a little more refined, Malik Nabers is in the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson tier. That's actually, if I bring that up just to make sure, he is in the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, scoring range, and he actually scored better than both those players. The next range is, I'll call it the BTJ/Ladd McConkey range, although BTJ is probably closer to Malik. Maybe not. I'm not great with math. But either way, BTJ put up 16.7 points per game. Ladd put up 15.1. So Ladd McConkey tier is kind of closer to the Jalen Waddle and the Brandon Ayuk tier. Waddle's had a wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 season in the 3 seasons since his rookie season. And then Brandon Ayuk had 2 wide receiver 2 seasons. And then obviously last year, not so good, but he still got time to play. And that's the thing. A lot of these players still have time to do more with their careers, obviously. So some quick takeaways, right? And I'm going to keep beating this into your head until you believe me, listen to me, or don't listen to me, quite honestly. I'm not going to fight you. If you don't want to trade players, that's on you. If you want to think that you know who the outliers are going to be, good on you. I don't think I'm smart enough to figure that out. So any players that scored under 6 points per game, I am selling them. I am selling them immediately. Absolutely. If I can get fab 4th round picks, backup quarterbacks, Jake Browning, Daniel Jones, etc. et al. I don't know if that's where you use et al. Anyway, I get that there's going to be outliers, right? Yes, there's a Nico Collins, there's a Jacoby Myers, and there's a Jamison Williams. But in general, these wide receivers do not hit. They just don't. 92% of the time, these players don't go on to give you viable fantasy production. I'm talking about not even wide receiver 3 seasons, and anything below that, well, quite frankly, wide receiver 3 seasons, I think are replaceable. But anything below that is just absolutely useless. And again, even taking into account the draft capital, if you wanted to use the draft capital, it's just 16%. It was just JMO and DJ Chark that actually broke the chains. No, that's not the word I want to use there. The mold. It was just JMO and Chark that broke the mold there. And again, Nico Collins and Jacoby Myers also broke out of that range to be very successful wide receivers and still successful wide receivers. They just weren't drafted in the first or second round. But again, they're included in that overall data set of just 8%. So I'm selling them. I'm just selling them. Can I get multiple thirds, right? Can I free up a roster spot and get multiple draft picks? And this is a great class to do it. If you can get someone to give you multiple thirds for AD Mitchell, you absolutely must do it. I don't know what else to say. You just have to do it. If you don't want to, that's on you. You have to. Guess what? I'm still going to advocate that you sell rookie wide receivers that score less than 9.79 points per game. Again, I know there are outliers. I'm not saying that there are not outliers. I need you to understand that. I understand it completely. There are players that have broken the mold and went on to produce. There are players like JSN. What I'm saying to you is that you need to at least investigate the market, right? See what's out there for these players. If you put them out there, for example, let's say Rome Odunze, who fell into this range. Let's say you just want to investigate the market. What can you get for Rome Odunze? Well, first of all, you close the pop-up ads. But for Rome Odunze right now, you could trade Rome in a 306 for, ironically enough, JMO in the 206, according to Dynasty Daddy. Well, not according to them. They're just pulling the trades that have been made. Making that all day. A 12-team start 11. There's a Malik Nabers for Rome, Brandon Ayuk in 2026 first. You're paying a lot in a start 11. Probably a deal I would make. But, then we have a 12-team start 10. Someone got a 104 and a 209 for Rome Odunze. I am doing that. That's a deal that I like. Just scrolling down here, there's also, funny enough, someone got, Rome Odunze in a 2027 second, 12-team start 10, PPR, obviously, half tight end premium. But Rome Odunze in a 2027 second, the other side got A.J. Brown, a 2026 first, second, and third. That is absolutely ridiculous. There's absolutely no world where that trade makes sense unless Rome Odunze put up Malik Nabers numbers. So that's what I'm saying, right? At least go investigate the market. At least investigate it. If you can get out for roughly the same that you paid, it's not a bad idea to do it. And even if last year you took my advice and traded away JSN, apologies. If you did it for a 26 first and that first fell into the first 6 or 7 picks, do you really feel bad about that? I wouldn't. So that's what I'm saying. At least investigate it. You don't have to do it. It's your team. I want you to understand. I don't have anything for or against these players. I'm completely player agnostic. I'm just going off what you've shown me. If you give me a reason to believe in you, I will believe in you. If you give me a reason not to believe in you, I will not believe in you, and I will go the other way. So that's where I am with Rome Odunze. And yes, I know JSN was an outlier. Thank you. I get it. Just saying, at least investigate the market. You can see there's some good Rome Odunze deals that can be made. Marvin Harrison still has hope, bro. Still alive. I know he had a wildly disappointing rookie season. Let me go back up. He scored 11.6 points per game, which in the grand scheme of things is actually very good. It's just that we expected probably closer to Lad McConkey. And if we dreamed a little dream, like a BTJ Malik Nabers season, but that's not what we got. We got 11.6, but there's still hope. There's still hope, right? Because over half the receivers in that range, the range that I talked about that Marvin Harrison was in, they went on to put up at least a wide receiver 2 season. And a quarter of those, which is 25%, went on to put up wide receiver 1 seasons. I know the sample sizes are small, right? I acknowledge that, but I'm just going off the sample sizes that I have. One more takeaway, and you might be shocked by this. Unless you give me an absolute haul for Malik Nabers or Brian Thomas Jr., I am not moving those dudes. Absolutely not. Those dudes are in the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type of range. Puka Nacua too, but he didn't fall in this data set. But he will, and it's going to be amazing because I think he has at least another one wide receiver 1 season. I think that's what it was last year. I have to look it up. Sorry, don't quote me. It wasn't worse a wide receiver 2, but I'm pretty sure Puka had a wide receiver 1 season last year. I'm a little rusty. I haven't been looking up scoring for specifically Puka, but I love Puka. Anyway, that's my takeaways. Again, this is just a piece of the puzzle, right? If you can go find other things to add to the data set that make you see something differently, specifically, if you find a way to find out which players that score under 9.8 points per game, if you can find out a way to discern, to identify which of those ones are going to be the outliers, the ones that are going to go on and produce at a high level, cool. You know what I mean? Share it with me. I'd love to see it. You know, I'm just telling you what I see based off of fantasy scoring, right? That's all I took into account. Fantasy scoring and draft capital. That's all I looked at. I understand there could be other parameters out there. But what I'm saying is that just based on the overall sample sizes, this is what I see. I'm trading players. Again, I'm trading players that have scored basically anything under 9.8 points per game. I just am. If I can get a decent return, not a decent return, if I can get a good return for Rome Odunze, I'm doing it. If I can get 2/3 for Adonai Mitchell, AD Mitchell, I'm doing it. You know, can I find someone to give me a second for Xavier Legette and re-roll it? Absolutely, we're doing it. So that's it. I thank you. Let me know in the comments what you think. If there's a rookie wide receiver that I forgot, let me know. I just, not off the top of my head, but I couldn't think of any more really that were important enough to talk about, like Jermaine Burton and I can't even think of anyone else. But if there's another one, let me know in the comments and I'll just look it up on the sheet and just throw them in there and see what range they fell into. So appreciate everybody watching. I know this went way long. I'm not even going to lie anymore and pretend that I could even keep it short. I used to do that and then it would still be 30 minutes. So whatever. Again, I appreciate y'all. Everybody take care.